tend to think that I have a list of things, you know, the body, horror, identity, or whatever, before I do a movie. But really, it's all intuitive, it's all spontaneous. And when I read the novel of Don DeLillo, Cosmopolis, it was the dialogue, really, that struck me. And I thought, wow, this is incredible dialogue. I really would love to hear wonderful actors speaking this stuff, because I think it would reveal all kinds of things. And so I really wrote the script, literally. I wrote it in 6 days, because I just transcribed the dialogue and put it in the form of a screenplay, and then filled in the spaces left over, and that was it. So that, to me, that's how it felt to me. Nothing more complicated than that.
I was going to ask also, I was reading an interview with Paolo Branco, the film's producer, who jokingly referred to you as the go-to guy for unfilmable novels. Obviously he did Crash and The Naked Lunch. Now, Cosmopolis has difficulties because obviously mainly set in a car. How did you meet these challenges, and how did you also make changes in adaptation to make it for a screenplay?
I've had the experience of adapting quite a few novels, including Stephen King's Dead Zone and J.G. Ballard's Crash and William Burroughs' Naked Lunch and Patrick McGraw's Spider. So by this time, I'm well aware that there are a lot of things that they are unfilmable. That, in other words, there are things that you can do in a novel that you simply shouldn't even bother trying to do in cinema. You'll do something else. And you have to accept that you are creating a new thing. You are not really putting the novel on the screen. You are creating a brand new thing. And we've all seen movies where you have a voiceover where somebody is reading the novel to you as though you're some child at bedtime. And I think that is an admission of failure. You have failed to understand the cinematic equivalent of what the book is. And so you try to fill it in with just reading the book. So I actually, the reason I could write the screenplay so quickly, partly is because I knew which parts to just not deal with, to just leave out, and those are the things that were just so literary, innately literary, that there was no equivalent. And I can give you an example. Have you all seen the movie?
Yeah.
Good. Well, in the book, Benno, the character played by Paul Giamatti, writes a journal. And in that journal, he talks about the body of Eric Packer lying on the floor beside him. And this is very early in the book. And he goes on, you get to be inside the head of Benno Levitt. And when I met Don DeLillo in Estoril in Portugal, he said, I was wondering how you were going to handle Benno's diary, and the way you handled it was to leave it out. And I said, yes, because I can't do that on film. I really can't. But what I give you instead is Paul Giamatti. I give you his face, his voice, his eyes, the way he moves. So that's my credit default swap, to use, commercial term. I give you that instead of Benno's journal, and that's the cinematic thing that I can do. And so that really is basically, for me, the way the process feels.
Let's bring Robert in, because we played your last film released in the UK, Down Me. And I was impressed by that film because apparently you made a small trilogy about werewolves. But that film, you seem to be really challenging yourself in moving into roles which are quite far removed from that. Bellamy, you played a character, to put it politely, was a cad. He was out for what he could get in life. Your character, Eric Packer here, is even more complex. He has a lot of issues. He has a very, very dark side. Was this a deliberate move to kind of test yourself and move into more varied waters?
No, not really. I just kind of tried to follow stuff.
It's that button.
I think I tried to move away from anything in particular. Bellamy, I read about after the first one, I liked it then, and I thought it was kind of funny. It's the only job I've ever done where I was thinking it's kind of interesting with the audience perception, people. Or maybe not for the second one, where you're playing one character who's supposed to be the ideal boyfriend or whatever, and then you play some guy who's literally just preying on bastardizing people loving him. But then I ended up doing it way afterwards when I kind of felt differently about myself. I'd done 2 more Twilight films by that point. But this, I just found this seemed really, really, really new. It wasn't just good. It was something which I don't think I'd seen before. And also, I mean, not just in the writing, but in some of the subject matter. Like, I don't think you're going to see a 6-minute long prostate examiner scene.
I have a collection of those scenes from other movies. I'll show them to you later.
And I mean, can I also ask, because I said, I mean, for me, having David Cronenberg here is such a big thing. Was he a director whose work you sought out, that you knew? Was he somebody that you wanted to work with, or was it something that the project came in when you discovered some of the other things that you'd made?
David's an adjective. I mean, you don't really think about being able to work with adjectives. Like, it's kind of, it never even came into my head at all. I mean, and the way it kind of, it came completely out of the blue, and it took me a while to really process it. And still, man, you know, seeing the movie, I like the movie, and there's something so foreign about it. And then it gets into Cannes and all this stuff. And I'm just like, it's so bizarre. Yeah, I mean, I hadn't sorted it out. I was thinking about, I was oversaturated at the time when I got offered it, and I wanted to do small parts and ensemble pieces. And then this one is almost, my character's like obnoxiously present.
Because every scene.
Yeah, and like incessantly speaking, and just and also even the way David shot it was like the camera was like 8 inches away from his face and stuff. Like, it was not what I thought I was going to end up doing, but you know, it's also was a very hard thing to say no to.
And how did you find your character? Because this is the second time I've seen the film, and you do kind of realise the complexity. It seems to me to have a kind of revulsion with himself and with the world he's kind of living in. He seems to be desperately unhappy at almost what he's become, and his acts become more and more self-destructive as the film continues.
Yeah, I mean, I don't necessarily know if he's unhappy. I think it's he's just incredibly. I mean, I think if the film has any kind of comment, this is why I always feel really comfortable with saying, like, so it means this, it means that, whenever I'm by myself, when I sit here today with stuff. I don't know, there's that kind of the absurdity of the world. I mean, that's what when I first read it, it read as an absurd comedy. And then people take it, you know, when we were in Cannes, like hardly anyone's laughing at anything. They were like, oh, it's funny.
They were French, you know.
So like, yeah, he's kind of, it's not so much about trying to destroy yourself. I think he thinks, you know, you look at everything, if the world doesn't make sense at all, then it has to start again. And you see it again and again and again. I mean, it's quite a timely story, is that, you know, you look at things about the financial crisis and stuff, which people say it's about that, which we weren't thinking about, but I mean, that to me, you don't really need to be prophetic to predict that something that makes absolutely no sense is going to completely fall apart. I mean, yeah, I don't think he's deliberately, he suddenly sees it for the first time, and once you see something, if you really see the world, then it all crumbles.
I mean, David mentioned Paul Giamatti, who's fantastic, but the whole cast, I mean, everybody is very good. How did it feel to be in amongst those? Because, you know, if you forgive veteran actors, you know, Juliette Binoche and Samantha Morton is great. You know, what was it like acting alongside them, and how much did you allow yourself to kind of learn from their experience?
I just spent the whole movie in like perpetual terror. Like, I mean, it wasn't like you could spend the first 2 weeks getting used to the movie and the world of it, because there'd be a new person every few days. But being able to at least have the limo remain the same, it was kind of, because it was a weird environment to work in, because there's no one even behind the camera. I mean, that you can see, and normally or how I try to act before you try and connect to the guy whose eyes in the camera, not so much the camera. And in this, you start having a relationship with the camera, like an inanimate object, and it's just really odd. And I think a lot of the actors who came in, that kind of really, it's not particularly nice feeling to begin with. So these big actors who were coming in, I was like far more comfortable with the environment than they were at the beginning, especially people like Juliet and stuff, which was great for me because I would have been shitting myself.
Was it more comfortable to do the scenes outside of the car? I mean, when Dave was saying about some of the scenes he left out, I know Don DeLillo's a very big fan of the film, I understand it. But there are scenes that take place outside of the living room, in the barbershop, in the restaurants. The scene with Matthew Amalric as the pastry assassin was great. You know, did they provide a kind of relief for you once you were able to get outside, for instance?
I think sort of. I noticed. Is this done?
Yeah.
I noticed there's I walk when I got out, my walk changed. There's a walk which kind of it's not my walk. Yeah, it's this weird thing. There's a scene when I was walking up to Benno's apartment. I just noticed it the other day. I was like, that's really weird.
Actually, when you go to attack the photographers after the pastry assassin, you have a walk I've never seen it once. Very weird, like a centipede. I don't know. I loved it. I mean, it was great, and it's spontaneous, you know.
I think there's something about being an alien. I mean, you kind of. I was so comfortable. I hate that. Those are things. I read a thing about James Gandolfini. They always wanted to just, no matter what's happening in a scene, I'll figure out some way to sit down. Probably for different reasons to why I want to do it. But like, it is a great thing to sit down. If you figure out some way to sit down in the scene, it's so much easier. And then if you do it for ages, when you stand up, you're like, what am I doing? Figure out, I want to sit on the floor.
When you leave the stage tonight, you'll have to do a little swagger. Dave, can I talk about the look of the film? I mean, I noticed that it's your usual cinematographer, whose name I'm probably going to horribly wrangle, Peter Straczynski, close, who I think you've worked well. I mean, I certainly remember him from shooting then Butterfly. I don't know if that's the first film that he shot with you. What was the kind of instruction on this film? Because, again, watching it tonight, it starts off, it's very kind of pristine, it's very clean lines, very kind of metallic. And then it kind of degenerates as they go out in the city, it becomes dirtier, obviously the graffiti on the car. Can you just tell us something about the kind of look you were trying to achieve?
Well, once again, I mean, I don't do storyboards, for example, and I really don't, we prepare by developing. We have to choose the locations, we have to talk about the design of the inside of the limo, for example, we have to talk about what shoes does Eric wear and why, and all of that. But ultimately, you are starting the movie, what is the first shot, and we don't know. I mean, we don't know what lens we're going to use, we don't know where the lighting is going to come from, we have an idea. And so for Peter also, it's kind of spontaneous. I mean, we used to sort of talk about, well, let's look at art, okay, maybe Rembrandt lighting, or maybe some modernist, and then we would look at like two paintings and get bored, and we realized that we can't do that, it's because he is like me. I mean, I can't come with an overarching concept that I then impose on the movie either visually or dramatically. I really need to, it's sculptural, it's like it's tactile, it's physical, I need to feel it, I need to hear him, I need to touch the guy, and gradually we develop the way to shoot the movie. And so we didn't have a plan that way. Organically, from the movie, from the inside out, the way to shoot it presents itself. I mean, as the doctor says to Eric, let it express itself. Because, I'm not saying that making movies like having a prostate exam, but, in a way it is. The fact that the limo deteriorates takes care of itself, and I hold back on showing that. We see the windows being sprayed from the inside because I really wanted to stick to Eric's perspective. I wanted the whole movie to really be from his perspective. So when he's in the limo, we are in the limo. We don't go outside until he does. So even when Cosmo, gets into the car and he says, "Man, what did you let your stretch deteriorate this way?" We haven't seen it. He has, but we haven't. And it's only later that when it gets out that we see, my God, it really has been, trashed completely. So that takes care of itself. And then you're on the street, you've got gritty sort of New York 47th Street, West End lighting, and that really suggests immediately that how it's going to play. So it's, as I said, this is a long way of saying that it's organic and it comes from the material itself rather than an overarching concept that we develop outside the movie and then impose on it.
I mean, you mentioned art. You said you start to look at a couple of paintings and then you get bored. There are obviously a couple of references to art in this film, Jackson Pollock and the Mark Rothko paintings. Was that in? Because I have to confess I've not read the original novel. Was that something that was in there? Because you go on from that to talk about kind of capitalism and how everything can be bought, can be purchased, and that's what seems to really draw the ire of Juliette Binoche. People begin to tell Eric what they think of him rather than telling him what he would like to hear. Can you just tell us about the references to paintings that are in the film?
Yeah, well, Eric, he sees in Mark Rothko, and in particular the Rothko Chapel, which is a beautiful building built specifically to house these last paintings that Mark Rothko did, and he sees there a kind of tranquility and a peace and a sort of serenity, and he wants that. But he only knows how to buy. He doesn't know any other way to achieve that. He doesn't realize, or he can't understand that he has to generate that kind of thing from the inside. You can't just buy it. And so he wants not just the paintings, but the chapel, because the chapel is a kind of a religious thing. So when I was deciding on what the credit should be, the credit sequences, we had a wonderful credit designer, and he suggested a kind of Jackson Pollock beginning. Pollock is not mentioned in the movie, but you get the idea that Eric is an aficionado of modern American art, and therefore certainly would probably have at least one or two Pollocks. And so we show the Pollock, this isn't the real one, we couldn't afford the real one, being generated, and it's all really speckly and actiony, and it's ADD, and it's kind of like Eric's mind at the beginning, very quick, very micro-timed and everything, the thing that Benno complained about that he couldn't keep up with. So that's Eric at the beginning. And then towards the end of the movie, he has achieved, possibly through death, this kind of Rothko-like serenity and so on. However, it did occur to me later, just recently actually, that both those painters, Pollock and Rothko, committed suicide. And so it's kind of perfect, really, for Eric, I think, to collect them.
Final comment from me, and we'll take some questions from the audience. Watching the film the second time, whenever I say this, it always feels like I'm trying to get people to pay to see it twice. But it's a very dense film, it's a complex film. When I watched it the first time, I saw it in Cannes actually. I enjoyed it, but it took some time. When I watched it again tonight, things drop into place. And you mentioned about the dialogue. It's almost, I know you did The Naked Lunch, but it has an element to me of Burroughs, and it's almost like a dialogue all of its own. Sometimes they're talking, and they're talking about things that you can recognise, but there's a kind of code going on. And the film feels sometimes like a code that you decipher, and it's very enjoyable to decipher. Do you enjoy the fact that the film has this kind of multiple enjoyment for people? It's not something that you just watch